Welcome to the Potion Podcast, your raw look at the hospitality industry, brought to you by SHC. It's good to see you.
You too. You too. Wow, look at that back bar. Hello.
It's a little. I got a new webcam, and so it sort of fish bowls behind me. But there's a substantial amount of stuff. The wife and I are moving fairly shortly, and we calculated that I need 50 cases to move my whole collection. Wow. So, yeah, well, because I do my BC Spirits stuff every day. So every day I've got cases of stuff just lying around in my office right now of just new stuff distilleries have sent me to taste. So
nice problem to have.
Yeah. It's excessive. So, but we've got almost 80 distilleries in the province now, and every single one makes at least 2 to 35 things. So the bigger ones make the bigger one makes 35 SKUs, which is a lot of product. So, how have you been through all this?
Okay. I'm in New York and everything's a little crazy still, but, the city's kind of coming back to life a little bit, little by little. But it's still, everything's always a little bit terrifying until we get through the.
Yeah, we've been shut down a little bit further in BC. Like our head doctor lady closed all bars at 10 p.m. So all bars and restaurants have to be shut by 10 p.m. across the province, which has been a bit of a gut punch.
Wow.
But
yeah, I think we've got 11 p.m. here.
Yeah. So it's difficult, especially seeing that because I took back over Clive's. So I took back over Clive's a couple of months ago, my old place that I used to run back in.
Congratulations.
So, well, it came up that the manager was leaving that took over from me in 2013. And I'm like, they're like, would you be interested in taking it back? And I'm like, yeah, for legacy, for just pure legacy, I wanted to take it back. And so I'm there part-time, which is roughly about 35 hours a week right now. So, yeah, but
that's not quite part-time.
It's part-time for me.
Okay.
It's part-time for me. So apart from all my other projects, and I'm finishing up book number 3 and 4 right now. So,
wow.
Yeah, I'm not sure why I did it, but wrangling almost 250 bartenders for this next edition of Great Northern Cocktails. So that's going to be fun. So I usually with my podcast, I like to start off with like an origin story. Like, how did you get into journalism and writing to start with?
Okay, well, I'm a career journalist. I've always been writing, went to journalism school, and the first part of my career was actually writing about finance.
Oh.
Yeah. I spent many, many years. It was sort of my gateway into the food and beverage space, actually. I spent many years covering stocks and bonds and commodities. And covering agricultural commodities sort of brought me into this world of writing about orange juice futures and pork belly futures when they still existed. And when I realized that I was more interested in the concept of the pork bellies and how to cook them, and rather than the financials of pork bellies, I knew it was time for a career change, and sort of little by little made my way into writing about food and beverage. And right around the time the whole cocktail renaissance was really opening up, almost 10 years ago, I guess, that was really when I made the leap to do this full time.
So how did you sort of win over, because it's a bit of a stretch and a leap to go from finance to writing about food and drink. How did you win over the people that you were pitching and the people that wouldn't know you as like the finance person? Like, come on, Kara, why do you want to go to such and such bar and write about Manhattans? And how did you make that leap, and how did you sort of push through it and get rid of the finance side of things altogether?
Well, it was really actually a very slow transition. I wish I could say it was as easy as that, and I just switched, but it was very slow and painful. I'd break into little outlets one at a time, and I think I just got more traction. I kept my full-time job for a very long time. not sure I would recommend that for anyone looking for a quick and easy fix, but for for financial stability, it was actually very useful. I'd have my day job, and then I'd be writing about food on the side, one bit at a time. And then one day I actually placed an article with the New York Times. It was about icebox cakes. And I remember walking into my boss's office and him like literally pulling up the paper and saying, "Is this you? Did you do this?" I was like, "Oh, I guess I'm not as stealthy as I thought I was. I guess I need to be a bit more careful about this, this hobby." I don't know. It was more than just a hobby. It was always more than just a hobby.
So I think your first book, you tied in finance and food, correct?
The Secret Financial Life of
Yes.
Food. Yeah, you've done your research.
I had to, because I was just like, I know, because the thing is like the last 2 years have just blown past so quickly with everything that's happened. I was away for 5 months last year, and that's why I thought you published your last book this year for some reason, because it's just all a big mesh of like the same timeline. And so I was like, I got to really make sure, I got to make sure that I've got this on point, because she's going to call me out if I don't. So your first book was like crossing over like your finance and love of food.
It was actually, in terms of when it published, it actually wasn't my first book. My first book was actually a cocktail book on spicy cocktails called Spice and Ice. That was the first one. But that one was always in the works, and it just took much longer because it was a much more in-depth, research-oriented book, and it was something I just really needed to get out of my system, It took almost a year to research and write, and then the publishing process, I worked with an academic publisher for that, and it's a very slow timeline compared to consumer publishing. So it very well, I think it was the first book I started writing, but it wasn't the first book that I published. That's never a convoluted answer.
Do you find that now that you're a full-time food and drinks writer, that writing books and getting articles and getting ideas is a lot easier now than it was before?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Because you develop relationships over time, that is for sure. And you develop a reputation over time. It's if I'm breaking into a new market, it can still take a lot of time. I still write very lengthy pitch letters and proposals, but if it's someone I've worked with before, it definitely condenses the time frame. People trust you. It's a relationship game for sure.
So what pulled you? Obviously, passion is a big thing, but you're sort of one of these fun outliers that you're in. I want to say our clique, like you're in the cocktail community, like wholeheartedly, but not as a bartender or as a restaurateur or anything. Like, what was the thing that drew you to this love of food and drink and going out and really documenting it? Because especially now, I think obviously when you first started documenting it, there was no internet, there was no social media, that sort of thing where everybody can be an influencer these days. Like, what was the draw that made you want to really just push forward and like show people the industry?
I think I feel like I should say, first of all, the internet existed when I started doing this. I'm not a million years old, I promise. But the thing that really drew me in, I think, is that the stories were so good. There was always so much going on. Especially early on, there was always a new distillery opening up, a new bar opening up, new drink ideas, new people and personalities. The thing that's the biggest currency for a writer is you want stories. You want interesting tales to tell. And there was always so much. I mean, the one thing that drives me so crazy about the pandemic is that I don't have as many stories to pursue as I used to. And I have to work a lot harder to find them. But it was really always about having just such a rich vein to mine. There's always so much going on.
So do you think that you're that connection between the glossy Food Network sort of overproduced sort of stuff and then the realities of the restaurant and bar industry? You're the sort of the conduit right in the middle. Do you feel like you have a responsibility to sort of show the general public how, especially now, I think especially now, I've been talking a lot about the restaurant industry being a little bit more vulnerable, because I feel as restaurateurs, as people in the industry, as owners, as bartenders, as just general staff, like we can have the most horrible day. But then as soon as we jump on the floor, it's gonna be all smiles, and it's gonna be like, and like showing people like a good time, like even if we're hurting inside. Do you think it's an opportunity right now for the restaurant industry to sort of show its vulnerability and show, like, even if like Pegu Club shutting down is probably a perfect example. Like, even if you're a well-established bar, a well-established brand, this has really hurt. It's not just new restaurants and bars going out of business. It's like established brands like falling down.
I think it's really important to let people know what's really going on. People are invested in these places. I mean, I I miss going out to bars, just having a place to perch and have a drink and unwind and chat with the bartender and just listen to people around me talking. And it really breaks my heart to see what's going on in the industry. Um, I think people need to know that right now there's just so much going on. I don't want to tell anyone's story for them unless they want to tell it themselves. There's a bartender here in New York, a bar owner who's been a long-term member of the community, very popular bar, and he's just been confiding that he's just done with the industry.
Mm-hmm.
That it's harder than ever to make a living, and it just becomes untenable, and people just don't seem to understand. And you have on one hand these established bars like Pegu closing their doors because real estate just demands that that's how it has to be right now. And on the other hand, there are all these new bars that could be opening up, and they're just being crushed. And what's going to be left? I honestly, I don't know. I mean, as a writer, I find it disturbing because I don't know what I'm going to be writing about,
Mm-hmm.
3 months from now, 3 weeks from now sometimes.
How many articles do you write a week? I'm curious about this because I've always been curious about, like, writers like yourself, how much, obviously it is a full-time job, and you've put out something like, since 2016, you've put out 3 books, 4 books. Like, you basically put a book out a year the last 4 years, haven't you?
It does kind of work out that way. I think my average is more like every other year. I know I've been prolific. Yeah, but what was the question again? How many?
Like, how many articles? How much writing do you do a week? Like, are you constantly in this cycle of, like, you wake up Monday morning, you go, okay, I got to do 7 articles this week. I got to research each one every single week. I got to come up with ideas and pitch them. Is there this constant, like, cycle of work, especially being based in New York?
Yeah, it's funny. My schedule's very different now than it was before when we could still travel and go out. I mean, it's been very regimented lately. It used to be that I would be on the road probably once a month, which to me feels like a lot, but I know for some people in the industry, like brand ambassadors who are constantly on the road, or travel writers who are constantly swinging from one place to the next, and they're used to writing on the road. I mean, that was where I found my sweet spot, where I could be away from the desk often enough to refresh and kind of replenish the well of ideas, but not so much on the road that I would get just completely overwhelmed and frazzled, which I find happens to me if I'm traveling too often. And I'm like, boy, I wish I had traveled more often back when I had the opportunity, because now I'm completely desk bound. And my schedule now is, it's very much, 9 to 5 at the desk, writing, just trying to force myself to make sure that there's always, a running flow of copy. I mean, for me, the schedule really varies because I work with, my number one outlet is Wine Enthusiast. That's my primary affiliation. And they have a print magazine as well as an online digital presence. And so I'm constantly trying to toggle back and forth between longer lead stories and shorter takes for the web. So it's really interesting to try to juggle between.
Yeah, because they have notoriously long print articles, but then having a 4-page print article online doesn't really make sense, does it?
No, although they do a pretty good job at translating those for web presence. I just did an article for, I believe it was in the May issue. No, I think that, what month is it now? No, it would have been the September issue. What is time really anymore? God, it's like March, October.
Exactly.
15, yeah, it would have been, I believe, in the September print issue, a story on vodka and vodka cocktails. And that was, a long print article. And it was just, literally just went on the web, I believe, yesterday, and it was completely repackaged and reformatted. So it's out there it's the same content, but it looks and feels very different. It just hits differently in print versus digital, I think.
So with your book writing, do you have a book deal with different publishers, or do you come up with a sort of synopsis of what you want to write about and then pitch it? Have you been with the same publisher for a while for the last couple of books? Or do you sort of bounce around depending on who is going to pick up the subject matter?
I've been working with Chronicle Books pretty steadily over the past decade. I started working with them because I met the acquisitions editor at a conference, a food writers conference many years ago. And I pitched him my first idea and he said, nope. I pitched him my second idea, he said, nope. And then I finally hit on a third idea. I was like, well, I don't know about this. At the time I was writing for a magazine called Chili Pepper Magazine. It's a real magazine, they're still around. They cover things like barbecue sauce competitions and salsa, best of salsa. And I did a column for them. My very first column was about spicy spirits and cocktails. And that turned into my first book, Spice and Ice. And I've just been working with them consistently ever since. And it's interesting, I've noticed that since then, the proposals I have to write for them have gotten shorter, which is great. Again, like I said, it's a relationships business. They know I'm not going to miss a deadline, and they know what they can expect from me. But I've also noticed that the time frame it takes to write a book, it's gotten really smaller and smaller and smaller. The first book I did for them, I got a year to work on, and then the next book I got 6 months. And then the last book I've been getting like three months. And by the time it's crazy. And by the time I stop, look on your face. And by the time I finish procrastinating, it's no longer months, it's a week, weeks, not a week. But how long did it take you to write Northern Cocktails?
The Cocktail Culture in 2013 was a year. Great Northern Cocktails was a less than a year, like that was 9 months. It was meant to be 6 months. But to wrangle 150 bartenders was not the easiest thing in the world. Like, if it was just me writing my cocktails down in a book, it'd be done in a couple of weeks. But constantly, like, you'd email a bartender and then you'd hit them up on Facebook, you'd hit them up on Instagram, and you'd be chasing constantly. It's been a little bit easier this time around for the second edition. But yeah, like anything less than I can't even think about anything less than like 6 months. 6 months would be my top out if I was writing all the recipes. But 3 months, 3 months is unbelievable. I wouldn't be able to do 3 months.
Oh, well, I mean, it basically means that you give up everything else in your life. I mean, you asked how many articles I work on a week. And if I'm working on a book, the answer is very, 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 very few. And I'm also really meticulous about testing drinks for books, because I feel if somebody is spending the money to buy your book, they deserve a drink that works. Mm-hmm. And if you can't deliver that, you failed them. So it's I try to factor that into the process, the wrangling of drinks, as you put it, from others. the testing, the writing of head notes, the writing of the front matter, the back matter. I mean, it's all very technical and geeky.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I found it was everybody has their own method of writing recipes as well. So you have 150 recipes come in, and they're all different measurements, and then you start getting prep recipes in, and you go try and like adjust prep recipes to be like as conducive as possible. So you have 150 prep recipes that are completely grams and cups and mils and like solid. I'm sure you get this sometimes too. Solid ingredients set in mils, like 500 mils of sugar, 500 mils of water. Like that is not the way you should write this recipe. This is 500 mils of sugar is not 500 grams. So with patience and everything, like I get a lot of young bartenders, they want to start writing. They want to start, I'm sure you get these questions as well. Like, how do I get published? I've got an idea for a cocktail book. And I know even from my experience, it took me 11 publishers before one said yes. So it took me 11 publishers cold calling, sending out copies of Cocktail Culture, doing all these doing the usual synopsises and what you want to do. I found it very difficult because Canadian bars and Canadian bartenders doesn't get viewed, even in North America, the same way as a US bartender or bars would be viewed. What sort of advice would you be giving to young bartenders? Because there's hundreds that want to do this, that want to start writing articles, that want to start publishing books. What's the best piece of advice that you can give them?
Right. It sounds simplistic, but right. If you want to talk about books specifically, I think it helps to have an agent. I don't have an agent. Like I said, I met my first acquisitions editor at a conference, and that sort of served as a go around, and I've been lucky enough to work with the same publishing house. And if I were to go to another publishing house, I would probably require an agent. So probably for somebody new starting out, I would say start by writing a detailed proposal so you know what it is you want to write, and you're going to be asked for it anyway. And then I would recommend trying to find an agent, because you're going to want someone to open the doors for you if you can. I've advised people, if they're looking for an agent, to find a book that you really like and is similar to the book that you want to write, and look at the acknowledgments. And that's usually the best way to find an agent who might be, simpatico with what you want, and then just reach out to them directly. And they'll hopefully do the hard work of shopping you around. But you know what I'm seeing a lot of during the pandemic? A lot of people are self-publishing. And I think that's really pretty cool. Yeah. And especially in the bartending industry, it really seems to lend itself to these compact collections. I got one from, I purchased off of Etsy, Lindsay Madison in Seattle. Put out a book she called I think it's called Bar LM, and it's this brightly colored book of cocktail recipes. She did the paintings. I think they're watercolor illustrations. It's really just very, very lovely. And I think it's a great template for someone who wants to self-publish, that you can just create something and get it out there and sell it without any kind of middleman. You don't need an agent to enable you and a publishing house to bless you. You have, this magical thing called the internet that will allow you to create and publish and sell without leaving your home or your bar. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, my third book is self-published. So
how was that for you?
It's good. We were lucky enough that we've got a really well-known self-publishing house here in Victoria called Frisian Press. And so the reason, because the third book is all about BC spirits and cocktails from the distillery. So it's sort of a guidebook / cocktail book. I want to be able to update it every year. I want to be able to add more distilleries and more of everything to it every year. So I know that constraint, if I went to a publisher, would be quite large to try and update every single year, because they always expect if you didn't have this many sales, we're not going to do another edition. So the plan is to have an edition every single summer, adding different distilleries to it every single time. So yeah, when I started BC Spirits 2 years ago, there was I think, under 60 distilleries. And so 20 distilleries in 2 years have opened in BC.
But I love the idea that you need to renew this volume every couple of years, and it's this ongoing revenue stream because, you know, the first one gets out of date. You need to buy the second one and the third one.
Oh, and yeah, and being a writer and an author makes you so much money that you can retire to the Caribbean and hang out.
You did to laugh.
So,
how is distribution working for you on that? It seems like it would be such a pain point.
that's the thing, is Frisian Press looks after all of that. So they're just a really good house that looks after distribution. They list it on Amazon. They do all the listings and everything. So, and it's print to order. So they print X amount, they ship them, and away we go. So I'm looking forward to that. Comes out in May, and then Great Northern Cocktails #2 comes out in like a month or two after that. So yeah, 2 books in 3 months. I'm not sure why I'm doing that along with all the other stuff, but what's your plan for the next 6 months or 12 months? Have you got another book coming out
in the next 6 months? No. I wish. I'm envious of anybody who had a book already commissioned to write during the pandemic. I mean, what a perfect time to be, you know, holed up and working on a book project. And I don't know. And here I am between projects, and I don't know. I don't have a book that I'm currently working on writing or promoting. I do have an idea I'm kind of tossing around, and it's outside of the usual cocktail book construct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's different. It's probably closer to that first book, the Secret Financial Life of Food, and that is more potentially deeply researched. But I'm gonna just sort of leave it there because I'm still sort of mulling it and shaping it, and I don't know where it's gonna go. It may go nowhere. Who knows?
Because you put out so many books and you've worked with publishers for so long, do you think that because there was a substantial amount of books that came out during the pandemic, like there was a lot that sort of got released, do you think publishers, I know of a couple of friends who put out books just like late neck last year, and the pandemic sort of, even for Great Northern Cocktails, I was just about to do a big book tour in March, and that fell to the wayside, obviously. Do you think there was pros and cons, and do you think there was a lot of publishers like biting their fingernails going, oh, do we launch this book now, or do we wait, or do we see how this plays out? Because you can't do a book tour. Like, you can't even do an event and do a signing or anything like that. Do you think a lot of publishers were just like, well, we've got to just push through it?
Oh my God, what a crappy time to try to be promoting a book right now. I mean, the only upside I can see is that people are actually at home and they do want to make drinks, and it's easy to buy a book and I think that publishers probably did not hit the pause button going into the pandemic because the production process takes so long. The wheels are already just turning. And I suspect a lot of books that might have been slated for fall this year, those probably were paused. And things that were commissioned for spring almost definitely were paused. I have no doubt about that. But there's so many books coming out. I write a monthly column for liquor.com about bar books. So I'm lucky enough to get a lot of books coming my way on a regular basis. The construct of the column, anyone watching this, listening to this, send me your books. I need books. The construct is that it's usually 3 books intended for bartenders. You know, it's not necessarily consumers, it's directed to bartenders. So it's, you know, here are three bar books you should read this month. And sometimes it's just one book to read during the month. The point I'm getting to with this is that there's still a tremendous number of books coming in all the time. And I think there's still a lot of appetite for people to be reading and improving themselves. And especially with so many people out of work and underemployed, you know, people are really trying to find ways to transition into and prepare themselves for what comes next. And I feel like one of my roles in working on this particular column is to try to help say, here are some tools that maybe might be useful for you. Maybe here's a book about the history of the industry. Maybe here's a book about cocktails that might have some interesting techniques that would be of utility to you. Maybe I try to always include a book that's not newly published that might have been forgotten along the way. Here's a forgotten classic that maybe should be part of your repertoire.
So that being said, I won't keep you much longer, but what have been your favorite books of 2020? And what ones are you excited about? Because I know that Mr. DeGroff, King Cocktail, has got his new book, while his Redux coming out. What books are you excited about?
Well, that is definitely one that I'm excited about for sure. I got an advanced copy, and it's lovely. New photos, some little tricks and tips that weren't in the original. I love when you get two books that have come out, a reissue, and you can kind of see how things have changed and evolved. I felt that way also about Gaz Regan's book.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I could say, happier times, but in memoriam, it's interesting to see the two side by side for sure. I am looking forward to, let's see, there's a new book that came out that I'm really enjoying reading by Brian Bartels. It's called, I believe it's the 50 States of Cocktails, and it's all
everybody's raving about that one.
Yeah, it's a really entertaining read, and there's also lots of information that's new to me. I mean, that's really what gets me excited. A book that's new to me. There are just so many books that come out and you're like, yeah, I've seen all that before. I read all of those recipes on this and that website, and like, yeah, next, what else you got? And this had a lot of interesting little trivia that I had not seen before. I was like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that either. Okay. And here's a recipe I haven't seen before. And it's also it's a good mix of high and low. It's not all super high-end cocktails that have, 20 ingredients and you need to own a rotovap to make. It's also things like, this is the orange crush recipe out of a local beloved bar institution in the middle of nowhere. This is fun.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It's always nice to catch up to you. It's actually been a couple of years since we have seen each other, because I haven't been to Tales for a while, and I think the last time we saw each other was Victoria Whiskey Fest 2016. I want to say it was 2016. I think it was the last time I think we saw each other. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I hope that everybody listening gets a lot of value out of the patience and the necessary tenacity you need to do if you want to make writing a legitimate sort of part of your life. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It was good to see you.
It was good to see you. I'll chat to you really soon.
Okay.
Thanks, Kara. Bye. Thanks for listening, Pose Shifters. I hope you enjoyed that episode. I really enjoy sitting down with friends and peers and just chatting about the industry and getting down to the nuts and bolts of what's really going on out there. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, everything on all the platforms. Just hit it up and I'll do my best to answer any queries or questions you have. I'll see you next week, guys. Bye.